pop here. Just turned it on. Welcome to the Illini Nation pregame show. Bret Beherns here along with Jeremy Werner live at Memorial Stadium as Illinois gets set to host Rutgers at 11 o'clock. Jeremy, windy day here. First impressions of the Illinois, as I like to call it.
Yeah, this is Illinois' probably kind of day. I think Bret Bielema probably likes this weather. For a team that's not able to throw the football very well, they're going to be encouraged to run it. Rutgers, not a very good throwing team themselves, and Noah Vedral, their quarterback, but we know Illinois doesn't have a quarterback advantage over anybody, and they do have a couple good wide receivers in Bo Melton and Aaron Krugshake. So Illinois, I think, likes that it's windy, likes that it's a little slippery out here, because they can run that barge formation. They can run some 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, and really just try to establish what they did at Penn State, what they really have the last 5 games, which is ball control and move the ball down the field. But at some point, you feel like they're going to have to throw over 100 yards, which they haven't thrown for more than 101 in 5 games. They're probably going to have to do that to win back-to-back games.
Well, and the last time they were here, they didn't even have 100 yards of total offense. And so the Illini trying to put something together here following that Penn State win, which was remarkable in itself, and we'll talk about that all coming up here on the Illini Nation pregame show. Before we get too far in, though, I know a lot of people are excited about basketball. It's a football show. Let's just talk basketball for a couple of minutes. I see the score last night, 94-79, and people think, wow, they gave up 79 points to a D2 team. That's my first thought. What's your first thought after that game last night?
Well, even when they won their last game against St. Francis, 101-38, you could tell Brad Underwood was looking for something to be angry about, right? Like, because he's been telling us we got to be tougher. He's been basically telling the media he needs his team to hit another gear. And I think last night gave him all the ammo he wanted. The fact that his team struggled against a very good Division II team, but it's still a Division II team, I think that gave him all the ammo over the next 10 days to get his team prepared. To be shorthanded like they were is a concern. Trent Frazier's shoulder injury, that's the last thing you want to see in an exhibition game. Don't know how long he'll be out. Sounds like DeMonte Williams, Austin Hutcherson were just precautionary measures with their injuries. We know Kofi Coburn's really good, and when they get him the ball, he's unstoppable. Andre Curbelo is a bit out of control. He's got to find the balance right now. He had 10 turnovers. It's ridiculous, but he did have 12 assists, 14 points. I think what you wanted to see was a couple of young guys emerge. I think Coleman Hawkins in the starting lineup was pretty impressive. He just gives them some length, athleticism, versatility, some activity on the glass, some outside shooting, and some defensive versatility that they don't otherwise have. So that was his first starting lineup uniform, Brett. I think you should see him in the starting lineup yet again when the real thing happens. But I think Brad Underwood loved that. I think he loved that his team was tested, found a way to win and not be embarrassed nationally. But I think there's a lot to learn from that game. And I think this team's got some problems defensively, especially at the guard positions when they don't have Trent Frazier, when they don't have DeMonte Williams. And Andre Curbelo has got to handle the ball almost all the time. Like, he has no breaks as a ball handler. And we saw it last night how he can get out of control sometimes, and that lack of depth could hurt them.
Yeah, and without Trent in there as your backup point guard, so to speak, when Andre's out of the game, then I wonder who's going to take over that role. I know Austin Hutcherson has played that in practice as well. We saw that a little bit in the first scrimmage where Hutcherson was leading the point. He's not in last night either, so yeah, okay, take it for what it is. It's not freak out time by any means. It's just some things like you mentioned that Brad Underwood can work on. And as a coach, you know he loves that fact. He knew he was going to win the game last night. I think all along that was never a concern. It was just, okay, how can I expose my team? That sick and twisted coach mindset of like, hey, I get enjoyment out of watching their failures, so to speak.
Yeah, he wanted their flaws exposed,
right?
So he could say, guys, you have flaws, just because you're the number 11 team in the country. Yeah. So he loves that humbling moment, because his team can get better from that. That's why you play these exhibitions. That's why you play the non-conference opponents who aren't that great to start the season. But it does ramp up pretty quickly. I mean, they had 2 games against low major opponents, and then you get Marquette in game 3. So it's going to ramp up pretty quickly here, and they got to learn a lot.
The Fighting Deion Sanders, 10 days from now, I believe, right? November 9th coming up here. I don't do math, Jeremy. I just talk for a living, so don't hold me to that math. All right, let's talk some football here. Illinois trying to, I'm not going to call it a winning streak, but win back-to-back games. If you win 3, that'd be a winning streak. It has happened before at Illinois, not in a long time.
Two years ago.
It's been 2 years. There we go, right? Yeah. And that team, coincidentally enough, won 3 games in a row, made it to a bowl. Look, I'm not sitting here saying Illinois is going to go to a bowl. I know some Illini fans are out there trying to calculate, okay, well, we can lose one more. And it's funny how you win one game in Penn State in an upset, and deservedly so. They played great. They deserved to win that game. I thought they were the better team being there in Happy Valley and watching it on the field pretty much the whole game. And credit to them, they found a way to win. Let's pump the brakes on maybe a bowl game yet. It's still mathematically possible, but just for my eyes, some positive momentum for this team, deservedly so, after a couple of tough luck losses to Maryland and Purdue. And I just feel good for these guys to get that reward.
I think there are parallels to that win and the win over Wisconsin in 2019. A team that was struggling, needed a win in the worst way just to feel good about themselves. But you won that game against Wisconsin because you won the turnover battle, right? Brandon Peters wasn't very good for most of that game, but in the fourth quarter he made some big throws, you get some takeaways, you end up beating Jonathan Taylor in Wisconsin, right? Shocking the world. But the key was following that up with a win at Purdue in terrible conditions. Today's not as bad, but today is kind of the solidify that meant something. That Penn State beating them and dominating them. That wasn't a fluke. You go look at Wisconsin 2 years ago, maybe it was a fluke. That was not a fluke at Penn State. If you had decent quarterback play, subpar quarterback play, you probably win a regulation by 2 scores. So today, can you follow it up with a win and then feel like, hey, all of a sudden, we can start talking. Can this team win 2 of 3 to solidify a bowl? And then maybe we can start talking about if they're 5-6 in the last one, can they get into a bowl game at 5-7? Right. But you got to win this game to make that possible. This is the best Vegas has thought of you going into a Big Ten game. You're a 1.5 underdog. You actually opened as a favorite in this one. So this is a game you got to win. If you're going to talk about bowl game, you're going to talk about taking a step forward as a program. But I do think Penn State, that wasn't a surprise of how they played, and that their defense was really good. They were able to run the football. But they weren't able to throw it. But we have seen an identity form, I think, over these last 5 games, Brett, where sound defense, really good rushing attack, outside of the Wisconsin game where you're physically dominated. But this has been building for a while. Can you continue to build on that and impose your will in the trenches against Rutgers?
And the thing that it showed me is at Wisconsin, they just abandoned the run. They didn't, the first 3 drives, they didn't run once. And at Wisconsin, they said, hey, you know what? You got the #1 rush defense in the Big Ten or whatever it was at that time, and we're going to go do our thing. And I thought that was great from Tony Peterson. I thought he trusted what he wanted to do and just went out and did it and said, we're going to roll with it and gamble, and took some chances, some trick plays in there. And I love that assertiveness and aggressiveness from Tony Peterson.
They know who they are, and they know what they have to do to win football games. And it's not going to excite a lot of people. No. It's not going to, the national media focus on how ugly that game was. For Illinois, they wanted to make it ugly. They held the ball for almost 40 minutes in that game. They outrushed #7 team in the country by 300 yards.
Crazy.
That's beautiful football for them. If they just didn't turn the ball over, that went exactly according to what their plan was for that game. Were they fortunate with Sean Clifford being hurt and not himself? Absolutely. But they also, the defense, made up for 3 turnovers by Art Sikowski. So I was really impressed, and you got to be impressed with the grit of this team and just the physicality. They said, we're going to run this barge formation 26 times, and we think we can out-physical the #7 team in the country, and at that time, the #1 scoring defense in the Big Ten. And they did, and that's exactly what Bret Bielema wants to be. Of course, they'd like to complete some downfield passes at some point, too.
I don't think Bret Bielema cares what the national perspective is of his team is playing bad football. Wins take care of themselves, right? He proved that at Wisconsin, and even winning some games and doing some respectable things at Arkansas. So look, if they're going to come out with this barge package, then go do it. I don't think we're going to see that 30 times a game, but I think it does provide some effectiveness for them because it's so rare. I kind of think of it as, if you're not used to seeing something as a defense or an opposing team, and even though it is on film, is it even hard to practice against that, for Rutgers as they're trying to come out and prepare for this? I think it can be really, really effective for them.
Listen, Illinois didn't expect to run it 24 times.
Sure.
But Penn State did not adjust to it. And Illinois just kept running it, and they kept putting 4 men on the line of scrimmage against it, and linebackers and safeties are going to get blocked by 250-pound tight ends and 300-pound offensive linemen. So Illinois is going to show it at some points today and then see, hey, does Rutgers put 6 guys on the defensive line? Do we do some play action off this? It's not going to be their base offense, right? But their base offense is double tight ends. Their base offense is being a physical football team, and that's a wrinkle that other teams have to prepare for. And if you can continue to be successful with it and get 3 yards on certain plays or throw a play action to Daniel Barker, which they did off one and it was a touchdown that got called back, like those things can be effective for you in little instances. But it's just like a spread formation the offense has to prepare for, right? Like, and you got to spend part of your week preparing for it and wasting your time maybe a little bit. Sure. We'll see what kind of wrinkles Tony Peterson can make off it. Tony Peterson's gotten criticism, some of it deserved this year. I think he's called pretty good games the last couple games, knowing what his offense is. And I think he's created some opportunities in the pass game where his quarterbacks and his receivers just got to finally find a way to complete these downfield passes that can break open a game. Because if Illinois doesn't go over 50 yards passing or 100 yards passing, I don't love their odds in this game. It just gives you a little margin for error because you're counting on not having a penalty. You're counting on not having a turnover.
And I thought even when they weren't in the barge package last week in Happy Valley, they still ran the ball pretty effectively. It's not like the only time they ran was in this barge package with 9 linemen or tight end on the line, which just when you went back and watch it, or, I was on the field, so you don't get a true sense on the field all the time of like what you're really seeing out there. It's just a little bit different than watching on TV or from above here. You go back and you look at that and you're like, that is just different. I mean, it looks weird in a sense of what is out there.
But you're right, and I think Illinois wanted to hammer this home. There's 99 plays in that game. They only ran 24 out of barge, right?
But that's the most talked about thing. Everyone's like, let's talk about that.
But they ran like 220 yards out of their 11, 12, 13 personnel, whatever they ran. So they're able to run the football. And I think outside of Wisconsin, who's the best in the country at stopping the run, Illinois has shown against Big Ten teams, I think every Big Ten game they've run for over 167 yards. So they're able to do that. Like, they play good defense and they run the football. If they can just pass it subpar at a Power 5 level, I think this team could be dangerous down the stretch.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating thing, I think, for a lot of Illini fans is, you turn on a Maction game on a Thursday or, a lot of other teams around the country and you're seeing C.J. Stroud out there just chucking it around or whatever, and you're like, why can't Illinois complete a 10-yard dump pass?
Why does it look so hard for Illinois? Like, why does throwing a 10-yard completion, and it just is right now. It's confidence, it's talent, it's execution, it's all those things. And I think it's a lot on the quarterbacks, a lot on the receivers. There's some protection issues at times. They got to upgrade the talent. We know that. But Tony Peterson, I think, has called up some decent plays at times. You just got to find a way to execute it and gain some confidence.
Yeah, so that next question then goes to, all right, Brandon Peters is the quarterback. I can step a little bit this way, Jeremy. There we go. Brandon Peters is the quarterback. We know that going into today. Ryan Johnson, the walk-on D2 transfer from Northern Michigan, where I couldn't even tell you what town that's in. I'm not going to put you I don't know. He looks
Back
like
an island. I don't know.
There you go. He looks like a decent athlete and figure out there. He stands 6'2", 6'3". I don't know what he can do, but he's now the backup with Artur Sikowski out for the season. So what does Tony Peterson have to do to scheme up something to instill this confidence in Brandon Peters? Does throwing the 2-point conversion to win it do that for him? Or is it just a matter of, like you said, guys just got to throw and catch the ball?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about Ryan Johnson, but I think the fact that we're talking about Ryan Johnson says where this quarterback is, right? Like, Artur Sikowski wasn't very good at Penn State. I like his toughness. I like his demeanor, but 3 turnovers, and some of them were just could have been real killers in a possible upset of a number 10 team. Brandon Peters came in the game, completed that one pass. I actually liked one of his incompletions to Luke Ford. He threw it only where Ford could get it, and Ford had his hands on the ball. So I didn't mind that throw.
The McCray throw, too, was right there. That was
10
Sikowski, feet from there. And now I know that was Sikowski, but, like, those are the moments where I'm thinking, like, man, you got to catch those balls. I think there's warrant in what Tony Peterson is saying. I'm not trying to give an excuse for that. Like, the player's got to make the play. But, like, he's right there. Like, catch the ball,
Yeah. But Brandon, even on his 2-point conversion, Casey Washington was open for 2 seconds. And it's that indecision, that lack of decisiveness by Brandon, I think, is most concerning this season. His pocket presence and awareness just hasn't been there. I think he's just not confident either in himself or what's going on around him. And it's probably a little bit of both. So I think getting him early confidence, a couple easy completions early in the game. I like when he's on the move. I think he just thinks quicker. Maybe there's just less he's got to read where he can get some confidence from that. Because you can see when he came in the game, he did throw a better ball. He throws a laser compared to Artur Sikowski. But, yeah, we thought Brandon Peters Was that it for him going into Penn State as Artur Sikowski replaces him as the starter? He's got another opportunity here. His last 2 years outside of the Nebraska game last year have been awful. He has been really, his numbers are really ineffective, but now he's got another chance. What does he do with it? Can he lead this offense? Because no matter what Artur Sikowski did with turnovers, he just gave this team a little bit of life and juice in the huddle. Brandon Peters just hasn't been that kind of leader, hasn't provided that. He's got to do it with his play, and he's just got to make these plays when Tony Peterson draws him up. I mean, down the field, that's where you really think he can be effective because he's got a strong arm, he's got experience, but he just hasn't been accurate enough. So this Brandon Peters one more chance to kind of leave an indelible mark and potentially lead a team to a second bowl game in 3 years, which if he's able to do that, maybe people will look back at Brandon Peters' career a little bit better if he can end it, maybe like Riley O'Toole did, right? Yeah. Giving the program a little bit of a boost.
All right, let's see where that goes today. And look, if Brandon Peters gets hurt, the walk-on D2 transfers in the game for Ryan Johnson. I think Matt Robinson's pretty far down the depth chart in that, and I'm not sure Samari Collier's ready for that either. So if you're getting to Ryan Johnson, then I think you got some serious questions here in the final couple of games for the Illini. We'll hope Brandon is able to stay in the game. All right, let's talk some defense, because for me, that's been the reason why they've had so much success here. And, so much credit goes to Ryan Walters for what he's been able to do and transform this. And that magic number, I've been saying it for a couple of weeks now, if they hold teams to less than 20, I feel like they are going to compete, have a chance to win the game. And even Wisconsin, 24-0 was right there, just not able to get it done.
Yeah, and this is a Rutgers team averaging during Big Ten play 11.5 points per game. This is two bad offenses today. And they're a heck of a lot worse than Penn State. Doesn't mean Rutgers can't score 20, because they do have a couple playmakers. But yeah, Ryan Walters is making a name for himself right now. And I don't know if he's going to be a head coach next year, but he's going to put himself on the map with what he's doing with a group that gave up 79 points and 1,053 yards in back-to-back games to UTSA and Virginia. Since then, in 5 games, they've given up 89 points, right? So it's an amazing turnaround where he adjusted to his personnel, changed some personnel with Kirby Joseph, Seth Coleman. You're seeing Kalon Tolson and Tariq Barnes play really well right now, and his scheme has changed. Last week, they ran a lot of 3-3-5, and I don't want to get too football wonky here, but it's just a more modern defense where you got 5 defensive backs, more versatile, and it's just an aggressive defense. They're running a little bit more zone right now, but the most important thing is these players are playing with a lot of confidence, and you're seeing a lot of maturity, especially up front from Keith Randolph. I think he's playing like an all-Big Ten player. Devin Witherspoon, I think, is playing like an all-Big Ten player. And Owen Carney, Roderick Perry, Tony Adams has bounced back from an early struggles to start. Sidney Brown's probably playing his best football in a Illini uniform. So I think these guys are just understanding what's happening in front of them and reacting better and making plays. And that's a credit to this coaching staff. Ryan Walters, Kevin Kane, Andy Boo, Aaron Henry, Terrence Jamison. They're all doing a really good job because they've taken a monster leap.
Yeah, and we've heard Ryan Walters say repeatedly, pull the trigger. And I kind of thought of that when you were talking about Brandon Peters. Pull the trigger. Just be confident. Go out there and trust yourself in your play and your past and what you've shown that you're capable of doing. Just, Brandon, go pull the trigger and be confident in what you are. We'll see if he can do that. But back to the defensive side here, they're playing the Lovey ball in a sense, right? Like, I know that Lovey didn't play 3-3-5, but like when that confidence is something I didn't necessarily get from a lot of these same players. Like, these guys, not a lot of new players on there from Lovey's team last year that are on the field right now, but they feel like they do have that confidence, like you mentioned. What changed in that? Do you think it was more the scheme? Is it something Ryan Walters told them? Is it just experience? How do you pin that to what that confidence comes from?
I think they just had a little bit of success, and they saw this is working, and that our coach will adjust to us and put us in positions to succeed, and they have succeeded. And then that builds confidence and builds confidence. Plus, I think there's a little bit of talent there. I do think Lovey did recruit a little bit of talent where Devin Witherspoon is a really good player. Sidney Brown and Kirby Joseph are pretty good athletes, and I think up front they are dominating. I mean, outside of Wisconsin, nobody's running for more than 100 yards against them in Big Ten play right now since Nebraska. So they're just doing a really, really good job up front, and they're starting to get some pressure up there too. I think Owen Carney, 5.5 sacks over the last 5 games. He's been consistent. And then Kalon Tolson and Tariq Barnes are really applying some pressure. And Kalon, who I didn't know if he was going to be like a great fit for this scheme because he's not the biggest guy on the interior. They're starting to play him on the outside. He's getting sacks. He's getting some pass breakups. Just a really versatile guy. And Tariq Barnes is probably the best blitzer I've seen from the linebacker position for Illinois since Jonathan Brown. That was about a decade ago. So, yeah, I just think they have instilled a lot of confidence in this group. And then once you have success, you just feel like you're that kind of group. And I just want to say, like, Rutgers, their offensive line is in shambles right now. So I feel like this is the kind of game where the Illini defensive front can really dominate. And I do think Rutgers has a couple good receivers. Noah Vedral is not a great quarterback, but he can make some plays with his feet. So I think Illinois has a chance to be dominant up front, and they got to take advantage of that because Rutgers is playing a couple guys who were defensive linemen at the beginning of the year on their offensive line.
Okay. Is Illinois blitzing more than they were last year? Is it about the same, or are they just executing more on that? I know Lovey blitz, obviously, right? That happened. Are they doing that more? Are they more aggressive in that?
I think what they do is they disguise things better.
Okay.
Lovey lined up, and that's how they were running the play.
Sure.
So the offense knew where the ball was going. You heard other coaches say, we know what they do, and they don't hide it, right? This group with Ryan Walters, they disguise coverage. They might look like they're in man and then drop into zone. They might show that they're blitzing and then not come. If you watch on the defensive line and the linebackers and safeties, like the linebackers and safeties are moving around before the snap, trying to confuse the quarterback, which I always say with Lovie Smith, why not try to confuse an 18 to 22-year-old quarterback
Makes sense.
before the snap? Because then there's less time to react. He's less confident in what's happening around him. Ryan Walters is doing that. So Tolson and Barnes and Gay might be lined up on the line of scrimmage with the defensive linemen, and maybe one or maybe none of them actually blitz. But the quarterback's thinking in his mind that guy's coming or that guy's coming. And he might see Devin Witherspoon looking like he's in zone and then play man. That just confuses offenses a little bit, makes them react in real time, which increases the chance of mistakes.
All right, let's talk some Rutgers matchup things here. And I know everyone thinks Rutgers and thinks this is a terrible program, but I feel like Greg Schiano's come back and done some nice things. They beat Syracuse earlier in the year. Like they won their first 3 games, and now they've lost 4 straight here.
Had a chance to beat Michigan on the road. They were in that
right
game
there
at the end. Yeah.
I don't feel like Illini Nation should take this game and just be like, oh, it's just Rutgers of 3 or 4 years ago when, you know, Lovie Smith could go there and win at their place. Now, we did lose a game to Rutgers here. I don't think many people want to remember that one. But let's not lose sight of that. Like, this team does have some talent, but you mentioned the injuries, and that's certainly concerning.
Yeah, I mean, the loss to Northwestern last week was pretty ugly for them. They did not look good at that game at all.
Bad.
But the 2 losses before that are to Ohio State and Michigan State, 2 top 10 teams with great offenses. Illinois does not have that. So I don't feel like this is some huge mismatch today on the field. Both teams want to run the ball. Both teams want to play sound defense. Both teams struggle to throw the ball. Illinois struggles to throw the ball more, though I think Illinois runs the ball far better, and they play better defense at this point. Personnel-wise, Rutgers does have a couple wide receivers that concern me. Bo Melton is a really good player that just hasn't had good quarterback play around him. Aaron Cruikshank is a wide receiver and kick returner. He missed last week with an injury, but he's dangerous when he gets in the open field. And Noah Vedral isn't a very good quarterback for Big Ten standards, but he can make plays with his feet. And Sean Gleason, the Rutgers offense coordinator, he's the first offensive coordinator to have a second year at Rutgers in a decade. And that tells you what has happened at Rutgers. He is very creative. He's got limited personnel, but they're going to do a lot of things with eye candy. They're going to do a lot of fakes, RPOs, and Vedral can keep the ball. So Illinois got to be really disciplined on defense. They can't get, beat in one-on-one coverage. Otherwise, Rutgers could have some big plays. But defensively, Rutgers does some good things. Their linebacker, Fadusaki, is really good. He's one of the best in the Big Ten. They got some big defensive linemen up front. Number 50, Julius Marble, is really, really good. And they do have some secondary guys who are athletic. So I think their defense is capable of really keeping Illinois under 20 points, which isn't that hard for most teams right now. But Rutgers' defense, I think, is going to keep them in the game. The key for Illinois, I think, is just don't give up big plays on defense, because your offense really isn't capable of putting up those plays that we've seen so far. So I think Illinois should have an advantage because they run the ball well, they play good defense, but they don't make enough big plays to feel comfortable, I think, in this game.
Yeah, and other than that only touchdown that Penn State scored last week, which was on a big play, Illinois did a good job of limiting the big play, and I felt like they got those chunk plays. They were able to rush for 12, 15, 18 yards, even 9, 10 yards at a time, and that was a big part of why they won the game, in my opinion. All right, injury news today. Obviously, Artur Sikowski's out. You know, this game would have meant a lot to him to play against his former team. That will not be the case. He is out for the season with a broken arm, according to Bret Bielema, also needing shoulder surgery for that. So that's going to be a long recovery for him, and how he factors into next year. Sounds like Chase Brown is going to be good to go, which is really big for Illinois in that sense. We saw Sidney Brown with the club on last week. Bret Bielema said that's a longer-term injury, about a month, but he should be good to go. Any other injury concerns for you?
Vidarian Lowe is
Yes.
one to watch.
Yep.
Bret Bielema did say he sounded optimistic about it. I don't know. He didn't practice all that much this week, so Vidarian Lowe, the left tackle, probably your best offensive lineman. I mean, he and Doug Kramer played really well today, or this year. I would say Alex Billstrom filled in admirably, serviceably at left tackle, but Vidarian Lowe is a key piece for them. So they sounded optimistic. We'll have to see. Sometimes Bret Bielema says something on Thursday, and then players aren't available. But if you can get Vidarian Lowe back after you thought, oh, could this be a serious injury? He came out in a walking boot, which was pretty encouraging for the long term. Yeah. And then Deuce Spann has missed a couple games with a hamstring injury. He's the one guy who can really stretch the field for them. Probably won't play a lot if he does play. But if he doesn't play, Bret Bielema said he should be back in a week. So those are two guys that are really interesting to me. Vidarian Lowe is one of the best players and maybe the best chance of getting drafted on this team. And then Deuce Spann just gives you a playmaker that you seriously need.
All right, and the win, I think, is going to be a big factor today. It's coming straight out of the north here, the big American flag here, pointing directly south here. So a little bit of a cold wind today. I don't know, it's a pleasant day. It's not really that cold. Just need a jacket, light jacket if you're coming out here. But I think the wind and field position are going to play big keys into that for this team and how they go about what they want to do. All right, let's take a pick here, Jeremy. What are you thinking here?
Can I mention one more thing? If you enjoy punters, this is the game for you. Yes. Two Aussies. Adam Corsak's one of the best. He might be the Big Ten punter of the year.
Yeah, he was a couple years ago.
Yeah, Blake Hayes was a couple years ago as well. These are two of the best punters in the country, and with this wind, we might get a punting display here. Yeah. Joey and I set the over/under at 10.5. I took the over.
Punts?
Yeah, I took the over on punts today.
Combined punts.
So if you do enjoy punting, which last week we had great punting. Penn State guys, who's both a kicker and a punter, was fantastic. So maybe I'm only one excited about that, but also great to see Blake Hayes' family. Seeing him for the first time in 2 years, able to get out from Australia, where they've had a serious lockdown for the last 2 years. That was fantastic to see. But picks.
that video, go check it out. Blake Hayes tweeted it out yesterday, I believe, last night, of his parents. I think he knew his parents were coming, but he didn't know they were right there in the room. Yeah. Man, that is so awesome to see. And you just think about that and what these athletes have gone through, several of them, and going back home or not being able to go back home. I think of the Browns and they went back to Canada. They didn't know if they were going to be able to come back in a sense or what that might look like. And I don't know. I can't put myself at 22 and not see my parents for 2 years. That's
the
really
international students especially. And it's not just football, basketball, right?
Georgie for whatever else and all the other sports.
Yeah, and you think of all these other sports that have a lot of international students, a lot of the golfers, tennis players have been this way. I mean, there's a women's golfer from China who wasn't here the last year. She went home to China, couldn't come back. It's been pretty nuts.
Crazy stuff. All right, I'm thinking low scoring today, Jeremy. What'd you pick on the site?
I had 17-13 Illinois, back-to-back wins. I just love the way Ryan Walters' crew is playing. And I just think Chase Brown's the best offensive player on the field.
No doubt.
And I think Josh McCray has proven that he's a really effective runner as well. So I like the way they rotated those guys. I just love the demeanor and the identity they have formed on offense with that kind of physical play. I think the Barge formation we could talk about, maybe over-talk about it a little bit, but I think it just set the tone of what they want to be and how they got to win. And I think they can build off last week, but I think Rutgers is going to give them a battle. I don't think this is going to be easy at all today. Yeah, I think it's going to be low scoring and close as well. I like that 17-ish number. I think Illinois is going to put up a couple more field goals. I'm going to take them 20-13 today. We'll see if Illinois comes out and gets the win. Vegas does not love Illinois today. It's picking them as an underdog. We'll see how they respond to that big win over number 7 Penn State and come out and keep those bowl hopes alive. Now they could still lose one more game and still get into that. And maybe you mentioned, I think they are a good enough story with Bret Bielema now. If they are 5-7, maybe they do have a chance to get to a bowl game there. I think a bowl committee might like that, with the Bret Bielema effect. And you beat Penn State. You showed you had some big wins. But
but there are less bowl games this year. They did cut quite a few.
Right, there's less bowl games, and I don't remember, I haven't looked this up because we haven't gotten to that point yet, but I was talking with one of the people at Illinois Sports Information, and the APR, does it still factor? Remember 2015,
yes, they would have
Bill
been
Cubit was 5-7. If I think it was Georgia State beat Georgia Southern to take the final spot. Nebraska got in because they had the highest APR. Another team was ahead of them, had a higher APR. Illinois missed it by one chance to get in with a 5-7 record, which that team would have loved to, and it would have been great for Bill Cubit to have a bowl game. I think Illinois would love it. At 5-7, if you can get into a bowl game, but got to win this game. Start having those conversations.
Take care of business, and then we'll move on from there. All right, for Jeremy, I'm Bret. Thanks so much for watching the Your Illini Nation pregame show. We'll see you after the game on these same digital channels. We will stream Bret Bielema's postgame press conference. Real quick, what do you got on the site leading up here an hour before the game fans can check out?
Got a lot of basketball content from yesterday.
Oh, yeah, it's basketball season.
Yeah, a lot of basketball content from yesterday. We are working on a Blake Hayes story. Joey Wagner's on that right now. And there should be some interesting recruits here for Illinois as well. So we'll have all of that today at Illini Inquirer.
Okay, all right. Check out Illini Inquirer during the game. After the game, we'll also have plenty of coverage on WCIA.com. Thanks so much for watching.